Hey all, bit of fleet maintenance on the Beatus Prius. So, yeah, we bought this a little while ago for my wife. It's been pretty good. We haven't had any real problems with it, except now it's making a horrible noise in the front that I'm 90% sure is this wheel bearing. I jacked the car up and I tried to wiggle the wheel and couldn't really recreate the noise, but it sounds so much like a wheel bearing when you're driving that I'm pretty sure it's that. So I went out and I bought two wheel bearings actually, because I'd hate to do this side and then find out I could then hear noise from that side, because this side is definitely loud. So I'm going to pull this wheel off. I'm going to get the wheel bearing out and replaced. I'm also going to try and do an oil change and a belt on it, because the belt is left over from when we bought it. I never got around to it, and she's been driving it enough. It needs an oil change. These are a bolt-in hub, but from everything I've seen, they get jammed into the spindle real bad. So it's probably not going to be a nice, easy job, even though it's a bolt-in one. Alright, so I got this off. If you're taking this off, don't try and take the ball joint out of the spindle. Just unbolt it down here. Way easier. Save yourself also risking ripping this boot up. I got a little too clever trying to get the tie rod end off, and I kind of gacked up the ends of the threads. So I may be able to salvage those, I may not. So I may end up having to replace the tie rod, which would suck. But anyway, now that I have this off, I don't know if the camera will, I don't know if the mic will pick that up, but can you hear that? You hear the bearing? You're not supposed to be able to hear anything from these. Any noise and it's bad. So the fact that that's clearly audible means this thing is bad. So I still have the ABS sensor hooked up just because it disappears up in there somewhere, and I'm hoping I can be lazy and get away without it taking it off. But theoretically, if I unbolt these four, I can take the hub out. Realistically, it's going to be rusted in there. So my plan is to take these four out and then get the air hammer out and hammer on one of these ears and see if I can rotate the whole thing. Because if I can rotate the housing in the spindle, that'll break a lot of the rust free. And then either with the air hammer or just with a hammer, I can pound it out from this side. And then the new one's going to go in with anti-seize, so that any future person, if this car manages to survive that long, won't have to deal with that. But yeah, take these out and then beat the shit out of this until I get the hub free. Alright, well, we have a complete fail happening here. As you can see, it's still in there. As you can see, I've made many efforts to get it out with no effect. I actually, after I shut the camera off, I went and tried some things over on the workbench, which also didn't work. This is a steel hub. This is an aluminum knuckle, so galvanic corrosion has basically welded the two together, and it does not want to move. You can see just how much I beat the shit out of every part of this trying to get it out. It will not move, it will not rotate. I even tried like threading a bolt down into one of these, beating on it with a 5-pound sledge to see if I could crack it loose, sort of by doing that. That did nothing. At this point I've hit the inside of this so many times, I fear that I've peened over the edge and it's now flared out such that even if it were to crack loose, it couldn't go down because it's now wider at the top than it is elsewhere. Even if I could get the bearings in the center hub out, this flange piece is stepped. It goes part way in and then shrinks down to stick out the bottom here. So there's no way I could even like cut it to allow it some ability to shrink and get driven out. So this either needs to go and get put in a press and hopefully be able to be pressed out, or I need to go to the junkyard and buy another hub with hopefully a good bearing that I can then either press out and put my brand new one in, or put that one in and hope it just continues to work, and then if it fails, deal with this again a separate time. But at this point, I think this one is done. About the only thing left I could also try is heating this up, because steel and aluminum have different expansion rates, but I don't have a real torch, and I don't think I can put enough heat into this given its mass to make a difference with a little propane torch. And it's a few days later, and yeah, Prius is not done. So, as you can see, I've been having no success. This thing is in there so bad, like I have absolutely, you know, just beat the shit out of this trying to get it free. It's galvanically welded itself at this point. Maybe if I had access to a press, but even then I don't think a press would get this out, because it's just, like, I can see along the edges the galvanic corrosion that's welded the two pieces together. So I was trying to figure out what to do. Buy a new hub or buy a new spindle. That's $150. Buy a press, because I don't have access to it, and all the shops around here are so crazy busy right now. None of them want to deal with one of my fiddly little jobs. So I was looking at getting a press, but that's like $150 also. Better, or $180, I think. That's better than buying the hub. But at this point I've beaten the shit out of this thing so much, trying different methods, that I'm not entirely sure I trust the hub anymore. So trying to figure out what to do. Called around a couple places, was going to go to the pick and pull and pull it myself. That would have been about $42, I think, plus a core for this. But then I found a local place. They actually were advertising on Facebook Marketplace, but they're a junkyard that's been around forever. It's not just some dude. And they gave me this, which is the entire hub with the rotor, with the caliper, with the ball joint, and the sensor and everything. This was $35. Like, that's insane. Like $35, and they gave me the whole fucking corner of the car. Yeah, even the hardware they gave me, like, this is crazy. So what I need to do now is blow this thing apart, take the rotor and the caliper off of it, make sure whether this bearing's good, because if this bearing's good, I'm just going to put this hub right on the car. No reason not to. And then if this one is not good, unfortunately the ball joint's bad. I think the other ball joint might be torn too. But if this bearing's not good, it's got even the slightest bit of crunchiness to it, I'm kind of back where I started, but with lessons learned. And I can be more careful with this one, or I can go by the press or whatever, but at least I'm not trying, you know, because at this point with all this, what I've done to this one, forget that. We're going to forget that one exists. Things have happened. So yeah, we're going to blow this thing apart. We're going to find out if this bearing seems like it's good. If this bearing seems like it's good, this thing's just going to go on the car. All right, unfortunately, we're basically right back where we started. This bearing is also bad. I can hear it. It's at least as loud as that one was. This one looks like it's got similar corrosion. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to try the same trick with the air hammer to see if I can rotate this. And I'm going to try some of the gentler persuasion techniques, as in the ones that don't just have me flailing at it wildly. And see if I can pop this one out. And if I can't, I'll take this to a shop and have them press it out. So this is very frustrating. Hit it with the air hammer around the edges, outside and inside, to hopefully crack stuff loose. And then you saw a little bit of, I forgot to turn the camera around initially, but I had a, piece fits in here, and I was hitting that with a big sledge in hopes of cracking it loose. No such luck there. Honestly, this hub looks more corroded than the previous one now that I'm getting into it. So I guess my $30 hub wasn't as awesome as I thought it might be. But I need to figure out a solution with one or the other or both of these hubs. I don't know what yet.
I think I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and get myself a press. I mean, it's not terrible because I'm going to be doing the control arm bushings on the van in the very near future, and that's, I don't know, 8 bushings that I need to press in, plus ball joints, so 4 more ball joints, so that's a bunch of work that will be easier with a press. Honestly, my biggest frustration with it is storage. Those things are big and bulky. I'm not going to use it that often. And, you know, me with this garage, I always try and cram as much stuff as possible in, so I don't want to waste the floor space it's going to take up. So I'm going to have to figure something out with that. But, yeah, I think I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and buy myself a press. I hope I can press one or the other of these out intact. And then go forward from there.
And I'm back with a press. So now I get to assemble this and make another attempt at it. After all that, guess what ain't coming out? So I ended up using the air hammer to drive the studs out of the hub because the hub is wider than the rails there. So with that driven out, I could put the rotor down, tuck the 2 plates under it so the hub is floating and just the spindle is being supported. And then I cranked it down with pressure on the center. And I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but it's literally back feeding, like the oil is coming out when I try to push it. So this is under full tension right now, and that bearing is not popping and has not showed any signs of popping whatsoever. Like, that is under at least the full 12 tons, and nada. Nothing, zilch, zero. So that's the old hub. I'm going to try the exact same setup on the new hub that I haven't bashed all up. But yeah, this is not working. And I think this press is probably, if it doesn't work, this press is going to go back because, like, that's a perfectly good excuse for why the press should not. I'm not going to keep the press if it's not going to do its job. And hub number 2 in the press, and it's doing the exact same thing. It's not shifting at all. This press, I don't know if I'm getting the full 12 tons because that's leaking, but it's not giving any sign that it's even like trying. Like the bearing doesn't seem to be like there's no sign that it's applying enough pressure to pop that out. And I noticed something on, this is the new hub, is that the screw that holds this is snapped off. So if I use this hub, I've got no way to secure the ABS sensor in. So this hub is no good. That hub is no good. Neither of them I can get a bearing out of. So at this point, I'm going to return the press because it's leaking oil, and I also noticed that the center shaft is not quite straight. So the press is going back to Harbor Freight. That was a mistake. I'm going to get my money back on that, and then I'm just going to order the brand new hub because the brand new hub is $151 at Rock Auto. The press was $169, $159, something, whatever. More than that. So at this point, it's financially foolish to have a shitty press to try and salvage one of these 2 messed up hubs. So I'm going to order a brand new hub. I'm actually going to order a lower ball joint because those were both messed up. And I'm going to do it that way, and I'm going to pray to God that the hub on the other side is not bad. I should probably check that before I place the order. I think I'll do that tomorrow. Not today, I'm done. Well, here we are on the driver's side of the Beatus, and guess what? Yep, wheel bearing shot. So at this point, what I've done is ordered both front hubs, or sorry, I had both front hubs. Ordered both front knuckles. I've ordered both front lower ball joints because the one on the other side was in rough shape, so I'm just assuming this one's bad too. And I ordered both tie rods because I messed up the one on the other side, and expecting I'm going to have as much trouble getting this one out as well. So I might as well just do that. So then everything here is all taken care of. The only new problem is I chewed up the threads on this trying to get the nut off. So I've ordered a replacement nut, so I'm not just chewing it up again, putting the nut back on. But I'm not sure if I can clean that up enough to get the new nut on, or if I'm going to have to buy an axle as well. And it's a few days later, and parts have arrived. So these are the parts. The two hubs I had before, these are the two knuckles, two lower ball joints, one tie rod end. The other tie rod end and the axle nut are stuck in shipping right now. But this is a little over $500 in parts to redo basically the whole front end. This wouldn't be nearly so painful if I hadn't bought this pile of parts for a little over $1,000 for the van. This is the complete front end, new lowering spindles, new shocks, all the stuff to fix the AC, and a couple of other odds and ends on the van. I placed the order for all of this stuff a few days before the Prius job started, that maybe I'd order this stuff. So this represents a ton of money. A ton of money I wasn't really entirely ready to spend, but I figured this will be good because it'll solve a bunch of things on the van and get it in really good shape. But now, sometimes life just don't work out. Anyway, I'm going to stick all this in the Prius, see if we can get it working. Like I said, I'm missing one tie rod end. I'm missing the driver's side tie rod end. The only reason I have the passenger side is I damaged it when I was getting the thing off. So if I'm careful about taking the driver's side tie rod end out, I won't actually need the tie rod end on that side, at least not right away. The nut I need because I chewed up the end of the axle. The reason the nut chewed up the end of the axle is because I didn't quite hammer there's a little bit you hammer down with it to keep it from being able to unscrew, and I didn't get that far enough out, so it chewed up the threads as it came off. And I didn't realize it. I thought it was just the rust. So I might be able, with the nut that I have, be able to just bend that far enough back so that it's not actually in where the threads are. And then try and thread that on. I think I'm going to try that before I go buy an axle nut, because if I can't get it to thread on properly, I'm going to have to replace the entire axle because the threads are all gacked up. So I'd better to test it now than spend the money on an axle nut to then spend the money on an axle. But either way, let's just get stuff going. I'm going to assemble the hubs to the knuckles using anti-seize so that the next person working on this car doesn't have this problem down the line. The whole reason that it's got this problem is because Toyota assembles a steel hub to an aluminum axle, aluminum spindle, knuckle, whatever, with nothing in between them, so they galvanically rust to each other. So I'm going to try and prevent that for the next person on the line. And yeah, we're going to get this all, I'm going to get these all put together as much as I can on the bench. And then we're going to put them on the car and see if we can get the car back on the ground. Alright, and there they are assembled. I put the ball joints on like this because they bolt on anyway, so there's no point in bolting them on and then fighting to get them on. This is just going to make it all much easier. Hubs are bolted down. These are greased. The ring in here that protects the tone ring for the ABS, those have been put in from those two hubs over there. I need to obviously put the sensors in. Both are still attached to the car. The big thing with these compared to the old ones that I'm sure you noticed is I don't have any dust covers on them. The dust covers on those are pinched between the two pieces, and if I could get the hub out to get the dust cover off, I wouldn't have needed to buy new hubs. So, if I really was concerned, what I could do is cut the dust covers off of those and weld them to these metal hubs. But I don't think they're that vital. They help protect the inside of the rotor some. They do a little bit for dust, but not much. So I'm just going to run them without it. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think it'll be fine, especially for a beater of a car like this. So these are ready to get bolted back on the car. And there's everything back together. Hub bolted down at the top, hub bolted, ball joint bolted down at the bottom. Tie rod put on. This ended up being easy because there's a jam nut that keeps the tie rod from being able to rotate. And when I went to loosen them, instead of the jam nut rotating, the tie rod just popped loose. So what I was able to do was take the old tie rod off, wind the new one on right up against the jam nut that hadn't moved, and know that this tie rod is the exact same length as the old one. And that's cotter pinned in place. My ABS sensors in and resecured. The brake rotor is on. The bracket is on. I cleaned the faces of the brake pads. Put the caliper on. This this nut is back on and staked. Staking is kind of half-assed, but it's fine because getting it on was enough problem. So yeah, this side is theoretically all done. I should be able to put the wheel on, and this side will be done. So now I just got to do basically that exact same thing on the other side. All right, so all the important stuff's done on this side, so I'm going to show you a couple. So first off, this tie rod. There's a trick I have seen mechanics do, like on videos and everything, time and time again, and it has never worked for me, which is that supposedly you can break a ball joint loose of a hub by hammering here on the hub, and that'll crack it loose. I have tried this for decades. It has never once worked. Every single time I've tried that, I've ended up with a pickle fork in there, prying it out or hammering the shit out of the top of it to get it loose. Tried it on the other side. That's actually how I bashed up the threads, was that wasn't working, so I ended up going at the top here. In this case, I got this so that the top of the castle nut was basically at the top of the threads here, so there's a tiny gap, and then did that, and it popped loose, and I was like, holy shit, it worked. For the first time in my life, it worked. And then there was enough rust on the threads here that without the ball joint wedged in the hub, I couldn't actually spin the nut off. It was just spinning the entire joint in the in here. So what I ended up having to do was get the pickle fork out anyway and get it in between here so I could put enough force on it to be the equivalent of it still being stuck in the hub so I could get that off. So it literally caused me more work the one time it worked. And the nut here actually went on just fine. When I looked at it, the part that had been bashed in that it kind of gacked up the threads, by the time it had gotten all the way to the out, had actually carved itself threads. So I just put a little bit of anti-seize on here to act as a lubricant, and then very carefully threaded it on so I made sure it was actually on those threads, even though they weren't super great. And then rammed it home with the gun, and it actually cleaned. These threads are better than they were before, after it came off. So it's on there, it's on the threads properly, it's nice and tight. I've staked it, so it's good. I don't need the nut, I don't need the ball joint or the tie rod end, so I'm done with, theoretically done with new parts on this. This went on just fine. Bolt came out, it went back in, no problem. Though I'm realizing I actually have to take that off because I didn't clean the end of the little tiny bits of metal from the disintegrating hubs. That's actually going to come back out, but not. I wanted to show you is this. I decided, oh, I don't have to take the caliper off and the bracket off. I can take the caliper and bracket off as a one, because I'm not getting at the pads, I'm just removing them from the rotor so I can take the rotor off. And I unbolted it, and then the entire thing just came off with the rotor. Like, I can't get the rotor out of there easily because of the little ridge of metal at the top. So it's just hung up here like this, still grabbing the rotor. I don't know, this amuses the heck out of me. I find this very entertaining. But, so yeah, I'm going to take that on and clean the end of that, put that back in. I've treated this with anti-seize so the rotor doesn't rust to the hub face, because I've had that happen way too many times on cars. And then this whole thing is going to go back on, 2 bolts in the back, and this side will be done.
All right, well, we just took it for a test drive and celebratory ice cream, and appears to be all set. No more horrible howling noises. There's a very, very slight scrip from the left front, but I'm like 90% sure that's either just the rust on the edge of the brake rotor, or it's the little dust shields for the tone ring for the ABS just being very slightly off alignment, because the axle has a bunch of rust on it, so if that thing's even slightly off, I'm sure it's catching a bit of it. So I'm not going to worry about it. I just checked the lug nuts to make sure that they're all tight, so it's not there's no looseness there, but it's so much quieter. It's so much quieter that now I can hear the slight clunk in the front end from the lower control arm bushings being a little bit shot, but I'm not going to care about that because it's our Beatus Prius, so a little bit of noise, don't care. But finally this job's done. It's all set, the car's safe to drive again, doesn't make a horrible noise anymore, and I'm just so glad that this job is over. Now I get to work on the other two things I own. Talk to you later. Bye.